Gruppo. Pronto? Eccomi, scusatemi. Mi sentite? Ok, perfetto. Allora, scusatemi, c'è stato un piccolo problema tecnico. Allora, alcune istruzioni generali per tutti i partecipanti. Anzitutto di tenere sempre il microfono muto e lo schermo spento. Rinominare il vostro nominativo così da essere riconoscibili. Questo è fondamentale per i crediti APC e anche per chi sta su YouTube, così ogni partecipante è riconoscibile. Vi chiedo poi di fare le domande esclusivamente in chat, sia se stare su Zoom che se stare su YouTube. Questo è fondamentale, scrivendo anche a chi è rivolta la domanda, così il moderatore, che sarà il professor De Bernardini, si la raccoglierà e proveremo a rispondere tutti insieme durante il dibattito conclusivo. E infine rinnovo l'invito a tutti coloro che non hanno necessità di crediti APC di collegarsi attraverso il canale YouTube di ISPRA. E do la parola subito per i primi saluti al Presidente Laporta, che vedo collegato e che ringrazio chiaramente.
Allora,
Presidente dell'ISPRA.
Buongiorno a tutti, grazie a Luca Guerrieri per avermi dato la parola, grazie per aver organizzato questo evento particolarmente significativo e importante, peraltro assume un'importanza particolare anche alla luce del fatto che ieri il Ministro Cingolani ha emanato un apposito decreto col quale in qualche modo all'interno dei programmi e delle linee di attività e di missione che sono di competenza del MITE all'interno del PNRR in qualche modo detta la regola quadro per quanto riguarda l'implementazione dei sistemi complessivi anche di monitoraggio e di osservazione della Terra per quanto riguarda appunto poi le immagini satellitari, quindi delle immagini provenienti da satelliti. Quindi non credo sia stato fatto apposta di fare il seminario, di organizzare il seminario oggi, però la coincidenza è sicuramente felice ed anche opportuna proprio per stimolare questo tipo di riflessione. Saluto il Presidente del Consiglio Nazionale dei Geologici che vedo collegato, poi tutti gli altri ospiti, permettetemi un saluto particolarmente cordiale e affettuoso al professor De Bernardinis, mio predecessore nell'incarico di presidente di ISPRA e di SNPA e oggi delegato proprio per l'FP insomma, quindi è stato un precursore rispetto a questa materia. Oggi l'evento di oggi in qualche modo lo dobbiamo anche alla sua intelligenza e capacità di vedere in prospettiva le cose qualche anno fa, quando probabilmente nessuno poteva immaginare quello che sarebbe successo, quello che abbiamo realizzato e quello che ci proponiamo di realizzare. Credo che l'interesse rispetto al seminario di oggi sia anche manifestato dal numero elevato di partecipanti che testimoniano proprio quanto sia centrale già adesso e possa diventarlo ancora di più in futuro un argomento così, è una materia così decisiva che riguarda proprio il monitoraggio dei rischi geologici attraverso i servizi operativi di ground motion basati sull'interferometria satellitare. Io credo di poter dire, sarà un saluto rapidissimo il mio, ringraziando ancora tutti coloro che stanno partecipando all'evento, collegati ormai, come si usa ormai da 1 anno e mezzo da remoto. Io credo che siamo entrati proprio nel vivo delle attività di informazione e di promozione dei prodotti di osservazione della Terra erogati dal programma Copernicus, ovvero i cosiddetti di uptake, come si usa dire in gergo e linguaggio copernicano. Attività di uptake che sono supportate dal programma europeo Caroline Herschel Framework Partnership Agreement on Copernicus User Uptake, appunto l'acronimo di FPCAP, in cui questo evento si incardina, e ISPRA, che è l'istituto che presiedo, si pregia di rappresentare il nostro paese nel consorzio degli Stati membri partecipanti all'FPCAP, avvalendosi del Forum Nazionale degli Utenti Copernicus per il coordinamento delle diverse azioni presentate. Peraltro, lasciatemi dire che anche fino ad oggi lo svolgimento delle attività del programma Copernicus ha anche rappresentato una significativa evoluzione del concetto di sinergia e di coordinamento operativo, quindi io credo che sia particolarmente importante anche sottolineare questo aspetto, che non è sempre scontato, soprattutto nel nostro paese. Il ground motion, che è il monitoraggio dei movimenti del terreno, è un tema che viene sollecitato da una platea molto ampia di utenti nazionali, a cominciare dal Servizio Geologico Nazionale, che è appunto incardinato nell'istituto che ho l'onore di presiedere, ai servizi geologici regionali, al Dipartimento della Protezione Civile e Casa Italia, che sono le strutture poi della Presidenza del Consiglio che si avvalgono, direi quasi in prima battuta, di questi servizi, e diciamo ci viene chiesto dalle comunità locali con finalità, lasciatemi dire, opportune di gestione territoriale. In particolare il tavolo sulla geologia operativa, costituito da esperti designati in rappresentanza dei servizi geologici regionali e coordinato dall'ISPRA, Servizio Geologico d'Italia, fin dal 2017 ha partecipato alla definizione dei requisiti utili alla realizzazione del Servizio Nazionale di Monitoraggio dei Movimenti del Terreno, che sarà uno degli 8 servizi previsti dal programma Mirror Copernicus afferente al Piano Nazionale di Space Economy. E il fatto che ho la considerazione, ormai è un dato di fatto, che si tratti di un servizio costruito sulle specifiche esigenze degli utenti nazionali, rappresenta, a mio parere, intanto un cambiamento di rotta rispetto al passato, ma sicuramente un valore aggiunto che potrà assicurare di ottenere un prodotto certamente migliore, o comunque certamente più efficace, più efficiente e quindi più rispondente anche alle esigenze dei cittadini. Il programma di oggi pomeriggio è molto ricco e variegato, vede la partecipazione dei maggiori esperti in materia a livello sia nazionale che internazionale. Questo è il primo dei 5 webinar previsti e sarà presentato il servizio di ground motion europeo, l'EGMS, in corso di realizzazione da parte dell'EEA. Anche questo servizio sarà costruito sulla base delle esigenze degli utenti, rappresentate anche qui dalla presenza di ISPRA nell'advisory board. Scusate, non l'ho detto, anch'io ormai uso parlare per acronimi, l'EEA è l'acronimo di Agenzia Europea dell'Ambiente, ovviamente in inglese. Oggi saranno inoltre presentati alcuni servizi di ground motion nazionali già disponibili in alcuni paesi, la Germania e la Norvegia, e voglio appunto salutare tutti i relatori presenti e i colleghi presenti che porteranno il loro contributo anche da differenti, come dicevo prima, Stati membri. E chiudo rinnovando i miei saluti al Presidente del Consiglio Nazionale dei Geologi, Francesco Arcangelo Violo, che ha organizzato questo workshop con noi, in collaborazione con la Rete Italiana dei Servizi Geologici e con la Copernicus Academy, che è un'altra iniziativa che sta riscuotendo particolare interesse, proprio a dimostrazione del livello di attenzione verso questa materia e verso le iniziative che stiamo proponendo. Chiudo questo breve indirizzo di saluto augurando a tutti i partecipanti, tra cui numerosi geologi, colleghi geologi, permettetemi, uso il termine colleghi perché ho diretto per 1 anno e mezzo il Dipartimento Geologico d'Italia e quindi mi sento in qualche modo, sia pure impropriamente, parte della vostra famiglia. Vi auguro buon lavoro, ovviamente ci aggiorniamo poi non solo per gli esiti di questo webinar, ma appunto per gli esiti anche degli altri che seguiranno nei prossimi giorni. Grazie ancora e cedo la parola a Luca Guerrieri.
Grazie mille Presidente. Do la parola per un saluto al Presidente Violo del Consiglio Nazionale dei Geologi.
Grazie, buongiorno a tutti, ringrazio ovviamente il Presidente Laporta. Noi abbiamo aderito e accolto l'invito di poter contribuire all'organizzazione ovviamente di questo workshop con grande entusiasmo, convinti che aggiornare e formare i nostri iscritti geologi su temi di questa importanza, voglio dire, è una cosa che va fatta sempre di più e che noi collaboreremo sempre di più per poter portare avanti iniziative importanti su appunto il tema che si diceva sui servizi operativi basati su interferometria satellitare. Accolgo anche con soddisfazione la notizia che ci dava il Presidente Laporta sul fatto che comunque i monitoraggi satellitari abbiano, diciamo, un'indicazione importante all'interno del PNRR, che comunque vengono tenuti conto e quindi destinate risorse finanziarie adeguate, perché questi servizi, come tutti i sistemi di monitoraggio, fanno parte di quelle attività che noi geologi definiamo non strutturali quando si parla dei rischi geologici, quindi di attività di prevenzione, ma anche di interventi di sistemazione delle aree soggette a dissesto, ad esempio. Sappiamo quanto sono importanti queste attività non strutturali proprio perché i problemi nel nostro paese sono così ampi e diffusi, per cui non è pensabile che si possano risolvere con interventi di tipo strutturale, quindi dobbiamo dare molto spazio appunto a questi, però sappiamo, e questa è una nota che io segnalo molto spesso quando mi capita di poter discutere, purtroppo nei disciplinari di finanziamento che si hanno a supporto appunto dei lavori a cui ovviamente partecipano i professionisti tecnici, i professionisti geologi, spesso non si ha il giusto spazio anche a livello economico, ma anche diciamo la giusta postazione che deve avere appunto in un quadro economico di un lavoro queste attività di monitoraggio, ma anche ovviamente di cui fanno parte i sistemi di cui discuteremo adesso. Spesso si sa, quando si interviene in questi ambiti c'è sempre tra l'altro un rischio residuo che va monitorato, però non ci sono le risorse finalizzate anche per esempio per i monitoraggi post-operam, proprio perché, ripeto, spesso i finanziamenti dettano dei tempi molto stretti di chiudere il lavoro e quindi di chiudere il finanziamento e non consentono attività così importanti. Quindi queste sono delle questioni che noi poniamo sempre. Speriamo che anche nell'attuazione che ci sarà con i decreti attuativi di questo piano nazionale di presidenza e ripresa queste criticità vengono risolte. Ovviamente la professione del geologo sta utilizzando questi sistemi negli ultimi anni sempre con maggiore frequenza proprio a supporto dei vari aspetti di cui i geologi sono competenti, quindi non solo dei rischi geologici ma anche in tante altre attività, però ecco, quindi bisogna aggiornarsi, come dicevo prima, bisogna essere a passo con le innovazioni tecnologiche e iniziative come queste, ripeto, sono utili, però anche non dimenticando mai che ogni sistema per quanto innovativo, per quanto ha grandi potenzialità come queste, ci sono anche dei limiti che vanno conosciuti di applicazione e quella cosa che noi geologi ovviamente diciamo sempre, qualsiasi applicazione di questo tipo non può prescindere da un modello geologico e geomorfologico di base per la pianificazione e la progettazione di un piano di monitoraggio, ad esempio, da un modello geologico o geomorfologico di base affidabile e ben dettagliato. Quindi bisogna sempre mettere di pari passo assieme l'innovazione tecnologica, ovviamente con la geologia di base. Mi fermo qui, di nuovo grazie a tutti e auguro buon lavoro.
Grazie mille Presidente Violo per le parole e comunque per l'intervento. Un saluto molto apprezzato e gradito, insomma è stata anche l'occasione per organizzare questo evento, è stato un momento anche importante anche per noi e vediamo già che insomma c'è un certo successo di pubblico, cioè di partecipanti. Ricordo che è possibile accedere anche tramite YouTube e quindi chi non ha bisogno di crediti può farlo anche direttamente da YouTube. Per il resto a questo punto direi che possiamo switchare in inglese. Sapete che oggi il webinar è in inglese, abbiamo diversi ospiti internazionali E per fare questo invito il moderatore, che è il professor De Bernardinis, De Bernardinis, che tutti conoscete, e che comunque, vabbè, lo presento brevemente, se no si vuole presentare da solo forse è anche meglio, insomma.
Oh
comunque,
no.
Welcome.
Okay.
Ok, benvenuto. Welcome. Switch in English if you want.
Well, we have to switch to English. I mean, this is the toughest part. I mean, to switch from Italian to English. Firstly, I want to say thanks to Stefano Laporta for the kind, really generous words that he wanted to use toward me. I mean, that's it. And the President Piolo to be present here. I mean, and then because we are short of time, I'd like only to present to say a few words about the history of this service, this new service. I mean, I have to say that the Italian delegation has supported the implementation of global operational services related to ground motions, both at the European level as well as the national level, since the launch of GMS. So we are at the beginning of the 2000s, and supporting as well as along with for example, the satellite platform constellation like Sentinel-1, or at the national level, the Cosmos GEMED. This has been based on the experienced and the integrated operational use of satellite interferometry in data in situ of the Italian civil protection. We have to stress this point. Since the very beginning, since 2003, if I'm able to recall that. But we have to push quite a lot the European Commission to start this long way to have a core service, or a transversal core service as it is now, that has been included among the lands sub-services. But in fact, it's quite interacting and bridging between all the other core services, like the emergency core services, but also the coastal area management or the cultural heritages. This is quite an important point. And this afternoon, we'll be listening to this sort of different approaches from different countries. I wanted to stress this as a coordinator of the Copernicus Academy. I want to stress that this action has been financed under the FPCAP program, which is in Copernicus, which is dedicated to the user uptake in Copernicus and led by ISPRA. And very effectively, this action precedes a user activities that anyway we absolutely would have been needed to deliver. And it is absolutely desirable and necessary. And that, as I said, it is related to other operational services in which the ground motion plays a role. And I don't know if probably it was quite difficult for the speakers that I wanted to welcome as well as all the participants in this workshop, which is a training workshop, so is a user uptake activities. But so far I've been probably I'm talking too much, so I'm giving the floor to the first speaker of today, asking all the speakers to be very sharp, not like me, and at the same time giving the floor to Julia Röhring, and who will give us some first insights about the Copernicus user uptake and its, as I said, FPCAP program. Julia, the floor is yours, please.
Yeah, thank you very much, Bernardo. Yeah, thank you for providing me the opportunity to give here a bigger picture, maybe, for this workshop.
Sorry, Julia. I didn't introduce you. I'm very old, so I forget my duty. No problem. Well, but I mean, I have to say that Julia has been working with the German European Center since quite a long time, and actually is a regional manager of in the staff department international relations. And this is the reason why she's here, and she's responsible of the FPK project, because she has been responsible of bilateral cooperation program relation between DLR and the European institution, like a lot of us. Sorry, Julia, but I mean, this was my duty.
No, please, no problem at all. So actually here I'm now as coordinator of the FPK project. So yeah, as said, it's somehow a bit providing you the bigger picture as it was introduced. So this training is one activity within the project, and I'm happy to do so. So Bernardo already mentioned the overall objective the project is following. So it is about to increase the user uptake of Copernicus data and services. And here I think one specific of the project is that we try to focus and target new users and domains currently insufficiently developed, but with a high potential. And this can be comprise target groups from the commercial, but also from the public or the educational sectors. Maybe my first question to you would be, because I'm a curious people, whether if you would like to give your level of experience with Copernicus in the chat, that would be very interesting for me if it is really something you will or want now to start, or if you are a beginner, an advanced user of Copernicus, that would be something I would curious to know. In addition to this overall objective, we have 3 sub-objectives, so to say. So first of all, we like to promote the use of Copernicus and its application and services. The second is to foster the European space and service industry. And thirdly, we want to strengthen the European access to environmental knowledge and key technologies, and by doing so, enabling independent decision making. So let me give you a bit of a background. I'm not sure whether something I've already mentioned, as my Italian is absolutely weak. So I hope it's not too much double information, but I will do it very briefly. So it is an EU initiative, which means it is co-funded by the European Commission. And the Framework Partnership Agreement is one specific action in the current user uptake strategy of Copernicus by the Commission. And the idea was to leverage and extend the user uptake activities of the member states and to support the activities of the Copernicus Academy and Relays. So that is why it is not surprising that the majority of our consortium, which consists of 50 partners from 23 European countries, are either academy or relay members. So it was important for us, and I think pretty much of the consortium partners, which logos and some faces you can see at the bottom of the slide are, I guess, familiar to you, are key stakeholders in the national user uptake for Copernicus. And I think that was very important, so that we have key stakeholder, although we have, of course, not all stakeholders which could be part of the consortium involved, but nonetheless, key stakeholders within the countries. And what you can also pretty much see that the consortium have diverse backgrounds and experience. And I think that is also something of very great benefit we have. The contract with DG from the European Commission was signed in 2018. German Aerospace Center, as said, is leading the consortium. And let me now mention one specific of the project is that it follows a bottom-up approach. That means that the consortium suggests the European Commission their ideas on user uptake, and then the Commission, if they approve it, it and likes the idea, then co-funds it with a maximum of 85%. Implementation is done in annual work programs. So to reach the objective, we have 4 types of activities. The first one, information and training events. I mean, that is something you're now in this moment participating in, and I think which is all, although there are a lot of things implementing in that way, my impression is there's still a need for doing that, because as the users are that diverse, it is really important that user-specific offers are made to communicate Copernicus and enable the users to really exploit the benefits. A second type of activity is our active user dialogues, which are built and established to establish and expand the user fora and engage the users. Thirdly, application and services play an important role. They can be developed, or if they are already a bit more mature, they can also be piloted to exploit the benefits and roll out. And a third type are innovative action. Here the idea is to communicate Copernicus in new formats or challenges. And all activities, and I think that is also something we are really try to do from the very beginning, which means when we start the proposal, and the idea is that the target user groups are involved, and that is why feedback and involvement opportunities play an essential role in the project. So where are we today? So we are not only in this training, but this is part of the actions running, from which we have 170 at the moment. The European Commission contract the actions so far by 13 million. We expect several more actions to come until and approved until autumn next year. And I mentioned that the implementation is done via annual work program. So our last work program 21 has been approved. The Framework Partnership Agreement has become a highly appreciated instrument for the member states, as it is appropriate to address specific user needs. And I think here one key element that it is, and which is very helpful to really target the different user needs which we face over Europe and by different target groups, that it is a rather flexible instrument, and that it is the consortium partners, and they can really bring their ideas and the needs which they experience on the regional and national level, and then combine it in proposal and propose it to the European Commission. I think that is a very valuable instrument, and we hope to see continuation even if the current contract will expire. So we are in the lucky and the bad situation, I would say, that that we have that high interest, but the interest has become in the instrument higher than the budget availability. So we have unfortunately made to do some selections in what can be implemented and unfortunately not. What we also experience is that we have a growing cooperation and exchange over the last years, which means within the consortium, but also with key external stakeholders, such as the interested entity or the new player, OISPA. So we will, so we are here not really in the middle, as you can see in the graph at the bottom of the slide. So we expect the last actions to be completed in October 2025. So let me come to the opportunities and the benefits you can have from the FP Cup activities, in addition to the training you have today, and more will come, which I think is one key element. And one key offer of the FBCAP project, the events, trainings, information, and this will be also available on the FBCAP homepage, as well as additional events or announcements. So the participation in events is one way. A second way is to respond to calls by the consortium partners, and this could be done in two ways. So first of all, there are different partners offer challenges to which you could answer, or even some look for external partners to implement their action proposals, which has, that is what I mentioned earlier, the proposals have made, the ideas are here, but nonetheless, there are partners looking for external partners to really successfully implement and the activities. And yeah, you're welcome to visit our project homepage. Here you will find a lot of information on the project, on the consortium, but also on the resources, which mean the outcomes, which hope this is interesting for me. You are, in addition, always welcome to contact me as coordinator if you have any ideas or feedback. This is highly valuable. And yeah, now we will leave the bigger picture, and now really that you can now focus on the ground motion and the topic why you are participating today. I wish you a very good training, and I hope that and I'm sure that you will learn and improve your skills on how to use Copernicus. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Julia, for very effective speech, and thank for shortening your speech as well. I mean, thank you very much. We are perfectly on time, and it's time to introduce the entrusted entity called to implement and run the European Global Monitoring Ground Motion Service, the European Environment Agency, which is represented here by Erik Steen Andersen. Eric, the floor is yours, but before I introduce you, saying that you are a contract manager at the European Environmental Agency, and you are responsible for the cross-cutting coordination, which is very important, cross-cutting coordination of the Copernicus in situ component and the implementation of the European Ground Motion Services. I take the chance to say that Copernicus is not a satellite program, is not a space program, is an Earth observation program, and which makes use of satellite as well as situ data and other things, which is an important point. We fought for that for a long time. So the floor is yours. Go on, and good speech.
Thank you very much. I hope you can hear me well.
Yeah.
Let me take the first slide, if that's possible. 1 second. Yeah. So I mean, just to begin with the interesting part, I can assure you that the European Ground Motion Service is on its way to you. It will be available to you first quarter next year. So it's been a long way, as also mentioned just briefly before. First thoughts were really growing into early 2000. But of course, the main thing here is that we have now in Copernicus a satellite component in place with Sentinel-1, which really allows us to do something really, really interesting here. So just to say, it's been going on for quite a while, but it is on its way to you. And what you can see here is really just an example of data that we are now working with together with the contractors responsible for the production to test if we are on the right track. I will come back to that. Let me also just say that the presentation here will not be that technical. A lot of interesting technical details will be provided to you by Michele Crosetto in the next presentation. He is actually also the co-chair of the advisory board. So I will focus on the implementation of this really, really interesting service. One thing is that it's really, really important here to underline that this is really also a bottom-up process. I mean, this is because you users have from the start been pushing for a European ground motion service within Copernicus. So the whole process is really a bottom-up thing. You users defined what should the service do, how should it look like, what kind of users should we try to approach, and which kind of requirements should we meet. So this resulted in the establishment of a task force. Then a white paper was produced. We then, because the implementation of this service was then delegated to the European Environment Agency. So we took this white paper and said, okay, now we need to know in more detail exactly what we should do to implement this service. So we have what we call the specification and implementation plan. And then, of course, based on that, we started the procurement process, because the EA, the European Environment Agency, is of course not producing this product. We ask experienced, well-known contractors in Europe to do that for us. But I will come back to that. So we have a clear way from the end user, the potential end user, and all the way up to the implementation. Just very briefly, I mean, we are talking about a continental scale service. I mean, we are going to deliver a homogeneous map of ground motion. We will have millimeter per year precision, and we will focus on ground infrastructure replacement, including those caused by landslides, subsidence, tectonic. I will come a little bit more back to key application areas in a few moments. The main thing here is that you can see that the target area, at least for now, is the Copernicus participating states. So this is what we try to do. We use, as I said, Sentinel-1. So we really process a lot of Sentinel-1 data to end up with this product. And of course, we try to do our best to provide a product that can be used by downstream users, by other services, and also as it is by a number of countries who is not for the moment looking at a national service. So this is what we try to do. And of course, as Julia mentioned, and the whole background for this FP-COP project, I mean, the issue about ensuring user uptake, training, and all that is really also a key element of the implementation of the European ground motion service, and I will come back to that. What we try to do, and this is really a user requirement, we will focus on natural risk mapping and asset management. We will also enable the uptake, downstream action for benefit of end user communities. I mean, this is also clear. This is part of the package. So it's not that we ask somebody to produce the product and then we need to find out exactly how this product should be used by the end user. No, we try to package it in one package and focus on what kind of application areas should we focus on. And then at the same time, we try to ensure that end users will be able to use the product. Just very briefly to mention key application areas: natural and man-induced geohazards like landslide subsidence, seismic and tectonics, mining like active underground open pit mines. Yeah, you know most of these different application areas, and we will try to support them as best as we can. In some cases, people will need to add to the data from the European Ground Motion Service to really adapt to local local specificities, but on the other hand, in many cases, the European ground motion product can be used more or less directly. That's what we hope, at least. Also, civil engineering, buildings, power plant, pipelines, the energy sector, and you can see we try really to focus on some really important application areas. And this was actually also what was requested by the task force and by the users who have defined this service to begin with. So this is our aim. What we will do to meet end user requirements is really to have 3 different products available, or 2 of them probably will be of interest to you. We have a basic one, and I should say again that more details about these different products will be provided by Michele Cosetto in this presentation after this one. So we have basic information here. Really ground motion data, line of sight, reference to an INSAR point. This is basically what we are talking about. Then we have what we call a calibrated product, which is then the basic product but referenced to a GNSS frame. And then we have what we call the auto product, which is a calibrated ground motion reprojected into vertical and east-west components. So this is a 100-meter product, but that one is probably quite interesting to a huge amount of users. All this is really challenging, I have to say, but we have some very good people working on this. I will come back to that. So just one example, just to show that actually we are in the process of producing data to at least test data. So we can have, you can see here an example of the auto product. So you have the virtual component to the left, and you have the east-west component to the right. I mean, this is the kind of products that you will be able to see in this viewer that we will make available to you. So just to come back to the implementation, how we do this, the overall responsibility of the implementation is delegated to the EA, as I said. We are then supported by leading European INSAR and ground motion experts. I mean, this is clear. This is an important part of implementing such a service. We really need to work with leading European ground motion experts, and that is actually also what we do. And then really also very fundamentally, the GMS is implemented through contracts with public institutions and of course primarily the commercial sector. So what we do in order to have a really high quality, well-functioning service is that we have a production team in place who is really responsible for end-to-end production, meaning that they will not only produce the product, they will also disseminate the product, and they will also do user uptake activities. Then we have the advisory board, and I will come back to who is actually in this board, but for the moment we have just an advisory board because we would like users to have direct access to the definition and to the working of the ground motion service. We have a validation team because we would like independent validation to be performed of the data to ensure that these data are living up to end user requirements. And then of course also, which is really important, we have the user forum, and we will have probably annual user forum meetings where ground motion users, ground motion experts can come together and discuss how we should, if needed, we should improve the service, how it works. I mean, how can you use the service in the best possible way, and so on and so forth. So these user forum meetings will be quite important also when it comes to user uptake. As I said, we have a production team in place. You may know some of these companies like Ideas, Tri Altamira. So really key companies, European companies. We have the advisory board in place. You can see there's participation from Italy as well here, but we have a large number of European countries and experts represented in the advisory board, which is another way also to ensure that we can create trust in the service. And then we have a completely independent validation team. They have nothing to do with the production, so they are completely independent and will actually perform the validation of the products. And also here we have a number of contractors and subcontractors, and also Italian participation in the validation team. So the overall implementation, the plan is that we are now doing the ramp up. We are looking at the baseline production, which we will start hopefully quite soon. We still expect that there will be a product available to you in the first quarter of 2022. Then on top of this baseline product, which will cover from approximately February 2015 until end of 2020. Then on top of this product, we will have annual updates. So the first annual update will also be available next year, and then we will have in 2023, 2024, we will have annual updates of the products. So we will keep it up to date, and we'll of course ensure that the product meets your requirements. The way we are going to do this is that the production team will deliver what we call a demonstrational product. This is really the first delivery from the production team. Together with this product, they will also deliver a quality report. So the EA will look at this quality report together with the advisory board. If everything is fine, the product will simply be labeled pre-operational and of course available to you. And then again, the validation will be done on the product. If the validation is okay, at the end we will have an operational product. So this is to ensure you that in fact we are checking the product all the way through its operational status. Of course, we hope that the demonstrational product together with the quality report will be approved quite quickly. So it's not that it will take months to go from demonstrational to pre-operational, but of course from pre-operational to operational, the validation work will need to take place, and some more months will be needed. But you will have a pre-operational product, that's our hope, quite soon after the launch of the first product. One thing is really also important for us is to make this data available in the best possible way to you. So we have a WebGIS that will actually make these data available to you in a visible way. You can play around with the data. We will also have a possibility for you to download the data. Of course, all this will be available through the Copernicus Land Monitoring Service website. All the data, needless to say, I think, when we talk about Copernicus, all of this will be freely available to you. Here's just an example of the viewer that will be available to you. You can see quite a lot of detail. You will be able to plot time series. You can do different kinds of calculations, and you can also, after you have been registered, this is normal Copernicus practice, you can also download part of the data so that you can actually work with your data on your own system if you like. But all basic tools are available through this interface to you. And of course, it will be challenging. We hope the performance will be top class, but we will have a huge amount of points that will be available and time series that will be made available through this service to you. It will be quite challenging and quite interesting to see how this turns out. Also, I mean, as a background information, of course, a number of different documents and reports will be made available to you for your use, so you can really know about the product, how it's been produced, what kind of applications can you use it for, when should you absolutely not use this, and so on and so forth. There will be user manuals, there will be quality assurance and control reports, of course the validation report will be available, and so on and so forth. All this will be made available through the website, and this will also be part of ensuring that you can trust the product and that you know exactly what we have done to produce it. As I said, the independent validation is important. It will move the status of the product from pre-operational to operational. We have now also a contract in place for that. We have also on our website a document prepared by the advisory board, who is really which is defining how should we actually validate the European ground motion product. So in that document, you can find a lot of interesting stuff about how to validate a ground motion product. As I said, we have a contract in place. You can see that there will be several partners involved in this. There will be several test sites where we are going to do the validation. So also this is going to be quite interesting and really also demanding in a way, but necessary also to ensure that you can actually trust the data, and so that you know what you can use these data for. Another thing is also, and we've been very aware of this from the start, that there are already national ground motion services or regional ground motion services in place, working, operational. And of course, we need to work with them, and we can create synergy. We can create mutual benefits. And this is really also important for us. We should not work separately from European ground, from national ground motion services, obviously. And of course, what we try to do is to find ways to benefit from the activities at national level. But we also hope that national ground motion services, existing or new, can also benefit from the product made available by the European ground motion service. Of course, we can use this to as part of the validation. We can use this to increase knowledge about the product, in a way a user uptake activity. The national ground motion services, they have a lot of knowledge about local users and their needs, and we need to benefit from that, clearly. And also a simple thing is that we will find a way to have national contact points, so we can actually have these people as ambassadors for the European ground motion service, and also they can be some kind of a facilitator of user uptake activities at national level. So this is also important, and just to emphasize that we do not intend to create a service that is completely separated from what's going on at national level. That is really not our intention. On the other hand, we would really like to cooperate and exchange information and knowledge. Another thing, of course, is the user uptake, training, and so on. We will have a help desk, obviously. We will have annual user meetings, as I said. We will have communication and outreach activities, training events. That will be important. How can you use these data for what, and how to extract, how to understand what you see on the screen. You will have access to the documentation package, as I just said. And of course, we will have a really strong intuitive and informative dissemination and visualization system. This is really also important for you. This will be your mirror to our data, and therefore we need to focus really a lot on that. And then finally, of course, if you want to know more already now, if you want to look at the white paper, If you want to look at the validation report, the validation guidelines, if you want to look at other reports prepared by the advisory board, by the EA, by contractors, please go to the website, the Copernicus Land Monitoring Service website, and you will find more information there. And we will keep you up to date regarding the production phase and when we will have data available to you.
Thank you very much, Eric. Thank you really very much. I wanted to add two things before giving the floor to Michele Crosetto. The 2 points is it's a common point to all the core services, even if the effectiveness of the new service is expected to be at the regional and local scale. There is 1 point to have a core service, a transversal one at the European level, which is that we have the common results at the European level in order that he can use to discuss among us state members and the Commission and among state members themselves, which is a quite important point in order to support some common policies, not only about Earth observation, as you can understand. The second point is, as a coordinator of the Copernicus Academy, I'd like to stress the fact that, which is very important, Eric, that the entrusted entities, in order to carry on the user uptake, keep a strict link with the user uptake activities at the state members level, which is one important thing that we have been carried out just a few years ago, and now it's really effective. Then I wanted to stress that. So, Michele Crosetto. Michele Crosetto is Italian, and the most important things, several things have been said already about him, and he is the coordinator of Geomatic Division of CTTC, which is a Centre Technologique de Télécommunications de Catalunya. So I'm unable to say that, even if it's very close to Italian. But I want to stress that he has a PhD in topography and geodetic science from Politecnico di Milano, which is something place I'm very linked to. I mean, that's it. And Michele, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Can you see the screen?
Yes.
Okay. So, good afternoon, buon pomeriggio. I'm going to provide some technical details related to the European Ground Motion Service. The center where I come, CTTC, is a public research center located close to Barcelona, in Spain.
Great.
I repeat something about the European Ground Motion Service, which is focused on deformation or motion of terrain, structure, and infrastructure using data coming from satellite-based radar sensor. This service makes use of a remote sensing technique which offers wide area coverage and a relatively high spatial resolution. What does it mean? Means that we can have a global outlook of the deformation occurring in a given area, for instance, in a province, up to, at the same time, we have the capability to focus up to individual structures and buildings. The technique that we use is called interferometric synthetic aperture radar. It exploits microwaves coming from satellite sensors. And what is very important from the application viewpoint is that this technique is sensitive to small deformation at millimeter scale. Let's have a look of this technique just to get some key aspects. The first, how it works, what is the principle. Let's consider a point P on the ground. We pass with one of these satellites sending microwaves and measuring phases a phase which in particular is related to the distance from the satellite to the point on the ground. If we assume that there is a deformation, so the point P is displaced to P1, we need to pass a second time with a satellite which sends again microwaves and measure another phase, in this case related to the distance S to P1. Well, by making the difference of these two phases, phi-s minus phi-m, we are able to derive information on the displacement of the point from P to P1. So the technique in principle works with the two images. We have to say it works at least with two images. And I show you an example which is derived using simply two images. It is a mining area located close to Barcelona. The blue color in this case represents no motion between two acquisitions. The separation in this case was 35 days, about 1 month, while the color yellow to reddish indicates deformation, and in this case are deformation of the ground caused by underground mining activities. Well, this is just to show that it's possible to derive deformation using simply two images. However, the same site, this mining site, for instance, can be visited regularly, obtaining multiple images acquired over the same area. This is what the European Ground Motion Service exploits. The availability of large stacks of images over this same area is exploited to obtain more precise and robust deformation estimates. For instance, just to give an idea, the use of a lot of images is important to select well the points that can be exploited for the measurements, or by using a lot of images is possible to appropriately separate the deformation component from other effects, for instance, the atmospheric effects that occur at the time of acquisition of the images. So, by using two images, we can estimate the deformation occurring between the two acquisitions. By using multiple images, we can describe the entire time history of deformation of the observed phenomena. Let's see an example. This is an example of deformation time history or deformation time series. In this specific case, we have a first period which is basically stable, followed by a deformation which is linear in time, a small uplift, a small rebound, and then again a stable period. The availability of such a time series, we have one time series for each point that we measure, and we measure billion of points, okay? The use of time series is important to understand the phenomena at end, and ideally also to understand the causes of the deformation. We have said that we have this nice information for each measurement point. However, we do not have a measurement point everywhere. I'll show you why with this sketch. This represents a scene where arrives the microwave from the satellites, arrive the microwave, and we get the response in blue. We get a rather weak response from the tree, which is without leaves because we are in winter, and also from the grass, a rather weak response. While we get a nice response from the street with the wall, and from the building and from the balcony of the building. Now we have to come again a second time, and this is the second time. We are in spring. We again arrive with the microwaves. We get a completely different response from the tree and from the grass. This makes not possible to derive the deformation measurement from these areas, while we get very nice, very strong responses from the same point we have seen before. Well, basically the technique works if there is a good response and persistent response over time, and this typically occurs with man-made objects, rocks, etc., etc. So over such elements, we get good measurements with good deformation measurement, while typically we do not get measurements in the vegetated areas. And this is a map, an example from Holland, where in the fields that are in gray values, you can notice that there are almost no measurement points. Here, the points are represented in colors. So we have very little coverage in the agriculture area, while we have a lot of points in the urban areas. For instance, in the bottom left, and also in the dikes typical of Holland. I would like to comment a second characteristics of the INSAR measurements, which is the fact that the deformation is observed along the line of sight, which is the line that connects the satellites and the point on the ground. So is this line approximately, these are parameters from an old satellite called the ERS, but we measure the deformation along the line S to P. Okay, just to give you an example with real data, you can see here an ortho image with some colored points that are the measurement coming from interferometry. Let's see this reddish point that I represent with an arrow, a red arrow. I assume that the deformation is along the maximum slope of this point, and what we measure is that there is the real displacement, let's assume it along the slope, which has a given dimension, while we observe only the projection of this arrow in the direction coming from the satellite. So a slope which is moving at 10 millimeters per year, we only measure a displacement of 3.6 millimeters per year, because this is the projection of the velocity in the line of sight. About the data sources, the service is using the satellite Sentinel-1A and B of the European Union Copernicus program. Both the satellites carry out a synthetic aperture radar. The data are acquired at least every 6 days in 2 different geometry over the same location for any point in Europe. The data are available since 2014. So the EGMS products will show time series starting in this period, 2014 or maximum 2015, up to the date. I would like to introduce the 3 main products of the service. The first product is the so-called basic product, or also known as level 2A. The basic products includes deformation maps and deformation time series with measurement along the radar line of sight, as we have seen before. This is the basic product delivered for individual and consistent frames of the original SAR images. So these products follow the geometry of the original data that are coming from the satellites. The measurements are referred to a reference point. This technique provides relative displacement. So there is a reference point, in this case, for each frame, for each image. The processing is performed at full resolution, and the measurement availability in terms of coverage and spatial density mainly depends on the land cover type, as we have seen before. Lit density in the vegetated area, much higher density, for instance, in the urban area. This is the basic product. What about the calibrated product? In this product, the frames of the previous level, so the basic, are mosaiced. This is a much more interesting product from the application viewpoint. Probably you will use much more this second product than the first one. It consists of insert deformation maps combined with the reference GNSS network. So we use interferometry plus GPS and Galileo measurement all together in order to make a so-called calibrated product. The deformation still refers to the radar line of sight, as we have seen before. Okay, the generation of the products has to overcome the availability of GNSS data across Europe, and the product is generated at full resolution. I show you shortly one example. In this case, there are two maps coming from ascending and descending orbit. I will come in a minute on this. And you see that the two measurements, these are two independent measurements, show basically the same pattern. This is because the deformation are basically vertical. Then there is the ortho product. It represents a more advanced product, especially with respect to the first basic level. It includes two main deformation components, not the line of sight, but two components: the horizontal east-west and the up and down vertical deformation. How it is possible? It is possible by combining measurement coming from the so-called ascending and descending data. Ascending and descending are two different geometry. The same object, let's take, for instance, Catalonia or any place in Europe, can be observed by a satellite that is moving from south to north, and this is the so-called ascending geometry, but it can also be observed by a satellite that is moving from north to south, which is an opposite geometry. So we use these two geometry combined to obtain these two components. This is the same example shown by Henrik. The vertical components on the left, on the right, the east-west component. In this specific case, there is no horizontal component, so means that the deformation that we are observing are basically vertical, up and down. Okay, but there are many other applications, for instance, landslide, where you can have a significant horizontal displacement. This is just to close the processing. I accelerate to keep the time. So we start with the stack of images, insert processing to derive the level A or basic, mosaicing and GNSS calibration to derive the level 2B or calibrated, resampling and component calculation in order to derive the level 3 or the ortho. I was just to add that we are using to derive these products well-proven techniques. However, there is a complex data processing, and so the same processing involves several data quality controls that are listed here, just to say that apart from the production, there is an important effort in checking the quality of these products. And this is all. This is my contact if you have any question after this seminar. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Michele. Very, very, very effective, I have to say. Now Luca, we are supposed to take a coffee break, if I'm not wrong.
Yes, according to the agenda, we have 15 minutes of coffee break.
Yeah.
So don't disconnect, stay tuned in the seminar, and then we will meet at we're perfectly in time, so at 3:30.
Given information, how many people are connected at the moment?
Well, there are if we saw some people connected in Zoom and YouTube, there are more than 200 people.
Great.
So it's quite successful, because it is probably the most difficult webinar, because it's in English, and the geologists, professional geologists, maybe sometimes interested also in other. But I think it's very successful, and thanks a lot to all the participants. But stay tuned, because there will be a second part.
Be back in 10 minutes, not in 15 minutes. So we start on time, right?
Exactly.
Bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Quindi allora, le piante dei viventi si caratterizzano da dei viventi eucarioti. Questi sono viventi, ovvero nascono, crescono simultaneamente sul questo è il loro ciclo vitale. Queste si vedono in diverse forme. Andiamo dalle più piccole, come i muschi, alle più grandi, come le grandi sequoie. Come le grandi sequoie. Questo serve per prendere l'acqua dal terreno.
Vai. Vabbè, niente. No, non era veramente niente.
Voglio dire, ma lì siamo in...
Ok. Okay. Before resume our journey with the next speakers, who will describe the state of ground motion services at the national level, I'd like to ask the speakers to take note of the questions in the chat box regarding their own competencies, naturally. And because at the end we have a debate, and the first step in the debate is just to answer to the questions that the participant in the meeting, in the workshop, have already sent in the chat box. So this is just an advice for everybody, for the speakers, but for everybody as well. If you want to ask things, write your questions in the chat box. There is the only way to receive just a clarification and answer, or just to discuss some points. Now, let's start with Norway, with John Dales. John Dale is a member of the Geological Survey of Norway, and but he's also an important geologist and scientist. It's nice to look at some of his papers anyway, and if you want, I invite you to do that. But another important thing is, as well as the others that you have heard, is co-author of the document called White Paper, which is the basis of the implementation of European ground motion services. You can find that in internet, as well as in land core services C2. So that's it. John, the floor is yours.
Thank you. And my microphone is on. Yes. Okay. Thank you very much. Okay, we've heard a lot so far this afternoon about the EGMS.
I can't hear you, John.
Okay.
I don't know why.
We can hear. It's okay from my side.
It's okay?
Yes.
All right. So yes, we've heard so far a lot about European ground motion service, and I believe this is really going to be quite revolutionary for Europe. So I'd now like to present our Norwegian service, telling a little bit more about why we developed it and who is using it, and most importantly, why it's important for us to continue to operate a national service once EGMS is operating. So the Norwegian ground motion service is available online at this URL, insar.ngu.no. It's a ground motion service that's very much similar to what you will see with EGMS. We present the data in a web-based interface, and what we call a WebGIS, where you have access to all of the permanent scatterers data. We have basic tools in there for navigation. You can search for addresses and so forth, and choose various base map layers. Oops, yeah, it also functions very well in a browser. And I should also mention that the map platform itself is fully three-dimensional, so you can zoom and pan and roam in 3 dimensions as well. So why did we develop it? Well, we developed this service in Norway for very much the same reasons that we lobbied for the creation of European Ground Motion Service, our own needs, the needs of the government. Similar to the EGMS white paper that we were involved in writing and was released in 2017, in Norway, we released a white paper in 2014. This was released by the Norwegian Space Agency. And translated from Norwegian, you see it on the screen there, it's mapping and monitoring of landslides and infrastructure using radar satellites and INSAR method, a basis for the strategic planning for public authorities in Norway. And the reason we wrote this white paper was because we knew that the Copernicus program was coming up. It wasn't called Copernicus at the time. However, we knew this was coming. So Sentinel-1 satellites were going to be launched. They were funded and ready to go. And we knew that there was going to be a huge amount of Sentinel data available for the public authorities to use. The question was, how was this best to be utilized and how would we get the most information out to the users? So we established a committee, or rather the Norwegian Space Agency established a small committee, including myself and other members of government organizations, the road and railroad authorities, and the Water and Energy Directorate. And we produced this white paper telling about the method and the data sources, what it could be used for, and outlining the need for a national service that would be free and open to everybody. We had at that time a lot of experience with INSAR already. The first INSAR experiments we did in Norway were already in 20 years ago today. Between 2001 and 2005, we had done a number of pilot studies using data from the ERS-1 and ERS-2 satellites. This was actually pilot projects that were done for us by TRE in Italy. We were very impressed with the type of data that was produced, and of course, it was unprecedented the amount of data that could be produced. Never before could we have so many ground measurements for a small area. Here are some examples. This is some slopes on a mountainous terrain in northern Norway. The first example was a rock-filled hydropower dam, and here's the city of Oslo, where you see a significant amount of urban subsidence in the downtown area. So we were very impressed with the technique, and we knew this was something we needed to use, and we began to develop our own operational service in Norway to produce data ourselves. So the first thing we did was to actually acquire all of the available ERS data that covered Norway, or rather at least the most landslide-prone parts of Norway. And this is just one example of a large unstable rock slope that we discovered using this technique. This is in a fjord in Western Norway. The red and yellow area that you see on the mountainside here is approximately 1 kilometer long, and it's a broken up section of the rock mountains that is slowly moving down towards the fjord around 5 millimeters per year on average. This is an area that's now subsequently been investigated further and is under continuous monitoring. However, there were limitations, of course, to the ERS data. First of all, already by the time we were doing these experiments, we were no longer getting any useful data from ERS as the gyroscopes had failed. So after 2000, there was no useful data. The other thing was that almost all of the data in the archives was from the descending orbit. So almost very little from the ascending orbit, at least at our latitude. So the east-facing slopes had very little data. So towards the end of 2008, we began to acquire systematically RADARSat-2 data over the same most landslide-prone areas of Norway, along with the major urban centers. We knew this was something that we needed to do operational and not just map, but also monitor over time. However, with the 24-day acquisition cycle on RADARSat-2, we could only acquire about 5 to 7 snow-free scenes every year. So even though we started at the end of 2008, it was 2011 before we could produce our very first results. So we had to be very patient. However, every year since then, we updated the results with using more data, and of course, the results improved. So why did we decide to make this service free and open for everybody? Well, for maximum benefits to society is the short answer. Because while we are doing investigations looking for a very specific deformation phenomena, for example, the project in Oslo was looking at deformation related to a tunnel project, we saw many other types of movement. For example, here's the urban areas I showed earlier, the downtown area in Oslo. However, here's the train station a little bit farther west of town. Here we have another neighborhood which is undergoing some subsidence, which we now know is due to groundwater withdrawal. And here's another area in the city which is built on clay, and actually part of it's an old landfill. So we found that there were thousands and thousands of users that potentially could use this data. However, the Geological Survey didn't even have the mandate or the resources to track down and contact everybody who could potentially benefit from this data. So we found it was really incredibly important to make the data available, free and easy, and findable for potential users. So what exactly does our service look like? Well, you've already seen an introduction to EGMS, what's coming. Well, this is very much built upon our service and similar services, so it won't be surprised what you see here. So we launched our service first at the end of 2018. Currently, we're using about 4,000 Sentinel scenes per year for Norway, and we're providing data at approximately 5.2 billion measurement locations. Our current project, the development phase of the service, was started in 2016 and is up to today. However, we will continue to operate and develop the service further in the next contract period. As I said, the map in the browser is fully three-dimensional, rather like Google Earth. You can pan and zoom and scroll around in it. If you click on a point, you can see the deformation time series, the history of that point over time. Here you see there are gaps in the time series for Norway, and this is due to snow cover. So for rather part of the year with the snow cover, we don't get any useful data. The map also works quite well on a touchscreen device, such as a cell phone or a tablet. The project owners, as I would call them, is the Norwegian Space Agency, ourselves at the survey, and the Norwegian Water and Energy Directorate, who are the agency that's responsible for mapping or rather monitoring and mitigating landslide hazard in Norway. The system has been developed primarily by our partner in Norse in Tromsø with help from PPO Labs. And what do we do to produce this data? Well, every day we have satellite acquisitions all over Europe. This shows an example of a 6-day cycle over Norway. Within Norway, the Meteorological Agency operates a collaborative ground segment data hub. So this is where we acquire our data from every night. We download every single night. All the new images are continuously being unpacked and pre-processed on our high-performance computing system. We unpack the scenes and we co-register them to existing stacks of data. We get ready for the final determination of the deformation. And currently that's only done once a year. However, we might make that more frequent in the future. And who is using our service? We don't require any registration for our service, and we don't maintain logs of who is using it, but we do have information about the web traffic. And this is an example of approximately 1 year of data. You see very clearly that we have a pattern of access during weekdays and very little access on weekends. We have very little access over holiday periods. And if you look at the time of day that people access the data, it starts at the beginning of the workday and finishes off during the afternoon and evening. So we know that that is predominantly professional users of our service. We have approximately 100 to 150 users per day. On our launch day, we had over 2,000 because we had a lot of media attention on the national networks, and we were very happy to see that our systems managed to handle that type of traffic. The bulk of our traffic is from within Norwegian sites, although we get visitors from all over the world. So getting back to who's using the data, well, many people are accessing the data, but our motivation for building it was our own use, and we are one of the biggest users. NGU is responsible for mapping landslides in Norway, landslide hazards, and we've developed a standardized technique for, or rather a workflow, where we try to identify sites very quickly and then do risk assessment on them and concentrate our efforts on the most high-risk sites. So, of course, remote sensing is very important. Air photo interpretation has been important in the past, but it's almost completely overtaken now by using INSAR data. Here's an example, of course, of a moving landslide area. And of course, once we have identified a high-risk site or medium-risk site, we also do want to monitor it over time. So periodic displacement measurements are also important. On the lower left, you see a graph that shows the number of unstable slopes in our database over time, over the last years. And you can see that when we started using RADARSAT-2 for INSAR measurements, we found more and more sites, and we had an increased number of sites found. In 2018, when we released our first nationwide data set, we had over 100 new sites that were identified within the first few weeks using this data set. And on the right, you see one of these examples, an example of one of these sites. This is a block of rock along a fjord in the northernmost part of Norway. It's approximately 50 million cubic meters of rock, and it's moving downwards about approximately centimeter per year. There's nobody living right in that part of the fjord. However, right on the other side of the fjord is a community called Hunningsvåg. If the site collapses, it will generate a tsunami that will reach that town and probably destroy it. Operationally, we don't only have the mapping product that's important for us. On a number of high-risk sites, and also at all of our high-risk sites, and also a number of other sites, we have installed corner reflectors so that we can have data measurements all year long. So we now currently have deployed over 100 corner reflectors at about 20 locations in Norway. This is one example of a site in northern Norway. Again, operationally, the installation of these corner reflectors can be challenging. Here we bring them in with the helicopter. However, once they're installed, they don't require any data or they're very low maintenance. And we have a great advantage being so far north in that these very wide coverage of Sentinel-1 has a large amount of overlap. So here's this one example that I showed you. We have been monitoring using RADARSAT-2 for many years. And with RADARSAT-2, we had data every 24 days. And with some gaps, of course, because as a commercial operating satellite, they were not always able to get the data. With Sentinel-1, the first 1A, we dropped that time period to every 12 days, and then every 6 days when the second satellite launched. But due to the overlap of these satellite tracks, we can actually measure this particular corner reflector network every 1 to 2 days. And of course, it's not only about landslides. Subsidence mapping, infrastructure monitoring are very important to other users. Here we have a number of examples. In the top, you see the city of Trondheim, where I'm located. Again, we have a large area in the harbor that's being built out into reclaimed land out into the harbor, and that's undergoing long-term subsidence. On the far right, you have some transport infrastructure with some settlement. And on the left, you see the town of Tønsberg in southern Norway, which is built on a lot of marine clay. We mentioned earlier about the level 3 product in EGMS, which is a combination of ascending and descending. And of course, this is important for us as well. This is an example of landslide area, prone area in northern Norway, where you see from the descending data and the ascending data that we have different patterns, and we combine this to get more information. But this can also be done in an urban area. Coming back to Tønsberg, here we see the data that's been resolved into a vertical movement here. And this is a horizontal movement, east-west displacement, by combining both the ascending and descending data sets. And we can take this further and display it along a series of profiles. And here we get not just the east and west displacement, but we can see the dip of the displacement and the total displacement. So here we see that we have not just predominantly vertical movement, but also a sort of a movement towards the center of the valley. So this type of analysis is important for us to be able to do. So why do we need to continue to do this? EGMS is coming. Isn't this going to take care of all our needs? Well, not exactly. It will help us a lot, of course. However, EGMS, as Henrik pointed out, has been contracted in a series of commercial tenders. So the EGMS products are defined for the next 4 years and will remain fixed over the next 4 years. However, in the meantime, in the national services, we can continue to develop new products, new services, and look for new and be prepared for new sensors. So, for example, in Norway, we're now experimenting on, for example, producing a coherence-based change detection product. And of course, we're also preparing for new satellites such as NISAR and ROSE-L, which will provide more coverage due to their L-band. And in addition, of course, we have very important operational services such as the corner reflector networks that are processed every single night and automatically transmitted into our monitoring systems along with other in-situ instrument data. And we're also developing partnerships with our neighbors. This year, we established a joint project together with Sweden, funded by the either the Swedish Space Agency and the Swedish Transport Administration, where we are experimenting with the possibility of a national service for Sweden. This project involves about 18 agencies who will be evaluating the data. We now have modified our downloading and processing systems to do a joint product for both Norway and Sweden. And here's an example, some examples. So here you see the map coverage of the joint product of Norway and Sweden together. And here we're zooming in on the city of Gothenburg, where you see again a lot of subsidence along marine and over marine clays. And here one final example zoomed right in to some new building area where we see both the ascending and descending data presented in 3 dimensions in a Google Earth view. I think that's my final slide. Thank you.
Thank you very much, John. I'm late, sorry. I was having a look at the chat box for questions. Thank you very much. Your presentation was, from my point of view, very deep, wise, and visionary, I think. And there is something at the end you said, which is very important, is that, I mean, it's just a suggestion, is that new satellite technologies only come from new needs and requirements, user needs and requirements. You cannot start from vice versa. You cannot start from technology and going to the needs and requirements of students. This is a big teach of Copernicus, I think. At this point, I think that we go further away with Germany and Michael Frey. Michael Frey is head of the Remote Sensing Working Group at the Federal Institute of Geoscience and Natural Resources, BGR, in Germany. The Remote Sensing Working Group is responsible for the first German ground motion service. She, having a brilliant career in the field of geoscientific remote sensing and GIS, she's also a member of the German Copernicus Expert Group and Copernicus Relays. Relays, another European network, user uptake network, like Copernicus Academy. Furthermore, she's leading initiator for the initiative of the European Ground Motion Services, as John is, member of the EGMS Advisory Board. I think that's it. Michael, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much for the introduction. I will start with my presentation and National Ground Motion Service in Germany, and following up on what John already said, I hope that I will also find the bridge to the European Ground Motion Service and why we are running the National Ground Motion Service all along. We started in 2019, the INSA-based Ground Motion Service Germany, and at the BGR, and the BGR is, we have a different structure as John explained for the Norwegian side. We are, BGR as the National Geological Survey is subordinate to the Federal Ministry of Economic Affairs and Energy. And we tendered the processing and we implemented the nationwide ground motion service as a consistent, verified and validated product. In Germany, we have a federal structure, and I will explain a little bit how we did move towards implementation of a national ground motion service. So the background was that we have ground motion processes which affect population, economy, and infrastructure. And the answer to the question, who pays for the damage? High public concern and political relevancy, and a high demand for a neutral data framework, meaning a transparent database which can be used in the public tasks, but which is open and free, also accessible for the population. INSA application is mature. When we started, we had measurements accuracy is proven, so we had a good starting point. Copernicus was in place. Sentinel-1 did show its practical work already. The data were freely available and reliable, and the availability of Sentinel-1 every 6 days. So we had an important starting point from the side of the availability of the SAR data. As John already explained, before we had to deal with ERS, and we didn't really have a good time frequency for implementing such a service. We knew that a service like that will create added values through the INSA technology for public and private sectors. The BBD generates a framework and fosters further development. So this was the background, also the strategy, and BBD pilot studies will generate interpretation skills and method experience, because we had a community not really aware and not really very well known what INSA data can what is happening on the INSA side, because up to this date when we started the implementation, INSA was mainly on a really scientific and on INSA expert level. Our reasons for a national ground motion service from the geological side, from the processing, we have many different ground motion processes in Germany, mainly slow moving processes or slow motions. One is the mining or abundant mining. We have pit areas in soil compaction, mainly in the north and in the south. We have landslide hazards all over Germany, and we have salt and carbon structures which cause in different areas subsidence. And so we had on the one hand, the demand to use information which is reliable and also which allows monitoring. Up to this stage, we only had very few information which was really on a long-term scale, and which was also available for whole Germany. So there we did set up a concept for the ground motion, for a German ground motion service, which is shown here. I'm not going to explain all the details. The main factors were, which are in blue and in orange colors, was that we had the situation that to operate a ground motion service and not to interfere with the private industry. So from the start, we did discuss these topics in different workshops and with different stakeholders. And then the concept for the ground motion was decided. So we are based on Sentinel-1, on the Copernicus mission. We are providing a nationwide medium resolution persistent scatterer product. And the the private industry takes up in Zoom products, higher temporal frequency products, etc., including also the value for the different contractors. And so this was approved, and we did move on. For one of the demands coming from the user side was for this nationwide ground motion service was the goal to have absolute movement rates. This was explained also for the European ground motion service already in detail. In Germany, we have the situation that we have as a so-called SAPOS network. And in the first round, we only did use the GREF network, which has only a few stations in Germany. And the second round, we did use the SAPOS network together with the geodesists. And out of 230 GNSS stations, we did use 191 for the calibration of the data and the rest for the validation. User uptake strategy, a very important point from our side, as we didn't develop the German ground motion service for the BGR. As for in our federal situation, the main responsibilities for geohazards, etc., is in the federal states. So we did run workshops during the development of the German ground motion service. We had between 100 and 120 participants on these yearly workshops. We did attend the National User Forum Copernicus, which is a format in Germany, which is also taking place every year. We did present on the Earth Observation Symposium infrastructure sessions, which were also under the frame of Copernicus, which were organized by DLR. We had user group meetings with the state authorities responsible for geology, geodesy, and mining. And we were lucky then to develop interpretation skills in more than 30 agencies. You see the graphs, 2018, 2019, 2020. This was one of our, I think, most important user uptake strategy. We started with the first product of the BBD, with the first PSI product in 2018, to ask the state authorities if they are willing to do pilot studies on specific areas, and they decided the areas they are interested in. We provided the data. And we did this every year, so we developed this as a user uptake strategy. And what you see is, and on the right hand, in 2020, the state authorities already did ask for the whole state to use this data and to implement them in their workflows. So this was a very important step forwards on the user uptake and also for the acceptance of the German ground motion service. Product development. I'm presenting a slide which is already known. It's the opencast lignite mining in Western Germany. And due to the lowering of the groundwater table, we have extensive subsidence. The subsidence boundaries follow partially tectonic faults, which are superimposed here. And in areas of abundant hard coal mining, rising pit water, which is seen on the left-hand side, is already causing uplift. And this will continue as a lot of these mining areas, abundant mining areas, will be flooded in the next years. An important step towards product development was, it was already said, we have ascending and descending line of sight products on first level. The background here is Hambach. It's parts of the community well known. groundwater management of the lignite mine, open pit mining is causing subsidence. And what we see here at the first view, the images look very similar. But when we decompose the products, we see that we have vertical velocities and east-west velocities, which show that the vertical deformation dominates for these processes, but east-west deformation is also present. And this was an important background for us also to develop the German ground motion service in the way that we do not only present line of sight information, but also vertical and in east-west velocity. So in the product, and this also is part of the European ground motion service. So we are in the same development stage. Movements along a transect, this is also possible. This was also already shown in our web service. Why is it important? I think it's very obvious. We have a clear cut here, which is following a fault in this region, and it's important to have the information that we have steep change in movement, so an annual displacement along a transect, but also the inclination along a transect which is causing problems for the infrastructure there, not only housing, railways, roads, etc. So where are we now? What is our status? What are the planned developments? On the right-hand side, our web service is more or less finished. We did implement different layers, geological layer, hydrological data, etc., which are available at BGR for Germany. We are at the moment online. We have data until the end of 2019. We are updating in October 2021 with the next release. We have interactive functions, products download, user manual are available. Also, our data or our website you can use without registration. So we are not running a registration for the download yet. We have also, similar to what was already said for Norway, we have peaks of users. We have mainly users from the public services, etc., but more and more we also have users coming from the industry side. Therefore, we decided to have a web map service which will be available with the next release also. The update of the Sentinel-1 national PSI product is once a year until EGMS availability. And we are planning to have regional, temporal, higher frequency insert products for the BBD after the EGMS is available, and it can be implemented. The development is also going for higher level applications, tools and products. So we have the user request to have more tools available which allow change detection, will allow immediate interpretation regarding fast changes in specific areas, etc. And we are also planning to include new multi-frequency SAR data products as they are available. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Michaela. You have shortened your speech as well, so we are pretty on time. I mean, really quite on time, more than on time. And we have, well, yes, we have more than 20 minutes spare just to spend in the debate, if you want. Then, finally, we ended this part of the session with Italy and with Luca Guerrieri. Luca is, I know him pretty well. He is a brilliant researcher, but I mean, the most important thing is that he's responsible for an area dedicated to the implementation of the system of geological services at the Hansen of the national geological knowledge and skills at the national level, which is quite important. And this is an important area within the ISPRA Department of Geological Services, Geological Service, as the president of ISPRA said before. And I think is the natural promoter of this action at the national level, as well the natural promoter of links at the European level. And I mean, I think that Luca is really the appropriate person to summarize the evolution of the ground motion mapping and monitoring at national level in the last 20 years, more or less. I can recall some first official application, civil protection, civil application in 2001. So more than 20 years. I mean, 20 years exactly. So Luca, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Chairman. Thank you, everybody. First of all, let me say thanks to the speakers that have preceded me in this webinar. It was very important for me and for everybody, I think, to see the state of the art of ground motion service at the European level and also at the national level. You have two nice examples of something that is already operational in Germany and in Norway. Unfortunately, the title of this presentation is not the ground motion service in national ground motion service in Italy, but we are going in this direction very clearly. And so this, with this presentation, I want to provide you an overview of what has been done and to show the primary role done by Italian scientists, by Italian industry, but by Italian institutional bodies in developing the technology, the science based on this product, that is the basis of these products, and also the users that have provided the requirements to make something that is really useful and helpful for the community. So I start with I hope that you see the presentation. I start with the first slide, just to say that I start with the presentation with the first slide, focus on some papers, some scientific papers that are really milestones for this technology, what is seen. So it is really an Italian story, because the first paper that I want to mention was published in 2000, so 21 years ago, by Ferretti et al., a group from the Politecnico di Milano, and they provided the permanent scatterers algorithm and INSAR, and most of the products are already already now based on using this. So it was really a successful paper, and of course everything is after that was based also take into account this. You see some products in this slide, some time series. So I don't want to go in detail on this, because during these 5 webinars you have the chance to have some details directly from the authors. So for example, Claudio Prati will be a speaker, that is an author of this, will be a speaker on 15 October. So he will be able to explain everything much better than me, of course. 2 years later, in 2002, another group of Italians with Riccardo Lanari, Gianfranco Fornaro, Paolo Berardino, so etc. They have provided another algorithm that is again a scientific basis for these products, for the ground motion survey that you see. It's different, but of course it's helpful again. And it's important to see that results are in general very comparable and effective, and efficient. So we have to thanks to all the scientists from different groups that allow to, let's say, validate each other the results and see that the technology in total is helpful and for our monitoring. These are two among many papers that have been published by Italians that have developed and refined the algorithm, and with some specific, let's say, improvements. I don't know again in detail. One from Michele Crosetto, who has spoken just a few minutes ago, another from Costantini et al. So this is just to point out that in the scientific basis for all these ground motion services that are operational now at European, national, and we will see also at regional level, have always an important role done by Italian scientists. Okay, this is another example. The same group from Milano did this, published this new algorithm Squeezer in 2011, and as you see in this map, it's clear the added value from distributed scatterers in terms of data. You see that we have information on ground motion, not only where there are corner reflexors or artificial objects that reflect the signal, but also in areas that in some way are more natural, more rural, and it is much, much important for us as geologists. We need to monitoring natural phenomena, so the movement of terrain. So this is quite very important. So this is another just a list of the papers that, according to Crosetto et al. 2016, that is a review paper of all the references to show that there are, of course, many others groups that have supported and helped to reach this high level of technology. But you see that the role of Italians is important, and so this is the first part of my presentation is just to say this message. We, the Italian scientists have really provided something important. Sorry. Then a second important improvement has been provided by the Italian industry. Okay, you know very well, I think, the contributing mission of Cosmos SkyMed, that is something different from what are the classical Sentinel-1 mission that are Copernicus and from ESA. These are the contributing mission that is really Italian and is owned by the ASI, Agenzia Spaziale Italiana, which is the Italian Space Agency. And this is a constellation of 4 satellites in X-band with a very strong resolution and revisit time that are, in some cases, much better than what we have on Sentinel. And so this is to show what? That this is something that improves and integrates the results from classical Sentinel-1 missions. And okay, it was published in the first results in 2010, but now we have developed, there is a new generation, second generation of Cosmos SkyMed with other 2 satellites that have increased the power of monitoring in terms of resolution that is lower than 1 meter, and also the visit times are much even better. So and also interoperability with other Earth observation missions. These are very important points because again we can put together the data, and the results is a very helpful monitoring, especially during emergency in real time. As you know, especially for civil protection needs, it's really very, very important. And this technology is Italian. Then I want to spend some time also on the fact that even if we have not yet something similar to what is shown by John in Norway or by Michaela in Germany, we in Italy there was a project, an interferometry project promoted by the Italian Ministry of Environment that is called the Piano Straordinario di Telerilevamento. That means that there was a first pioneer ground motion service. It was originally it was based on the data from Earth and from MDSAT, ascending and descending, of course. And then in the second and third phase was integrated with data from Cosmos SkyMed, even if not the entire peninsula, Italian peninsula was covered. These were really nice, I say, first examples of what is really operational. I think that most of the professional geologists that are participants to this webinar have had the chance sometime to use this data, and of course we have appreciated the high value of this, even if of course this is something that should be improved because we need some more regular and to have a really effective and efficient monitoring. The next news are just one slide to say that we have no a national ground motion service, but several regional ground motion services, PS journals at regional level. This is again a big result, in my opinion, and thanks to this effort, now we have already we're already able in some regions. You see in Tuscany, in Valle d'Aosta, in Veneto, and in Friuli Venezia Giulia, we have very nice examples of what can be done using this data for prevent or for early warning, and we will know much more about it tomorrow morning, because tomorrow half of the webinar will be directly led by experts from these regions, from Tuscany, Valle d'Aosta, Veneto, and Friuli Venezia Giulia. And so that's why I don't spend some time in it, because tomorrow you will be able to know everything from them in Italian, so it's much better. And so this is just to show you that this is the good news. And of course, we cannot forget that there is another group of research from CNR, IREA, that are providing a continuous scale Sentinel-1 based ground motion service based on SBAS. And this you see on the left the total picture in Europe, and here in detail on Italy. This is just an example to show that in 3 years the most let's say the former area was as expected the area hit by the earthquake in 2016. And the other was much more stable, but of course you will know something more tomorrow, because Riccardo Lanari, who is the director of the CNR area, will be pleased to give some more details on it. So this is another important milestone, in my opinion. Okay, this is what we have. Now I want to spend some more minutes to say what is ongoing and the effort that we are doing towards a national ground motion service. As most of you already know, this will be done through the Mirror Copernicus project. that is a very important project funded by the Italian government in the so-called Space Economy Plan, Piano di Space Economy. And ground motion is one of 8 services that have been considered priority. You see the other: coastal monitoring, air quality, land cover, the hydrometeor climate, water resource, and so environment, and also emergency and security. So this was considered one of the very important national service for this Mirror Copernicus project. And let's see how it was done until now. Well, first of all, as done by John, by Michaela in their countries, we start from the community of users. So, as our chairman said in the introduction, there is a regional, a national board, the Tavolo Operativa, that is done by ISPRA, plus the members from regional geological surveys, and a civil, another community of users is the civil protection system. Another one is the Ministry of Infrastructures, and another one is the Ministry of Cultural Heritage. All these communities of users are public bodies that express their requirements for this ground motion service at national level. Of course, the requirements are different because the needs are different, but it was a long process, but now we are ready to really understand what is really important. And so let's see, basically, in one slide, what was the result of this consultation with users. First, it was the need to have a continuous updating from deferred time to near real time. So not only deferred time for mapping, but also near real time. So for monitoring, you understand, in deferred time, you can have a sort of updating of inventory maps for landslides, for subsidence, for faults, for deformation fields that is to an event. So this is a need, but also in real time when a process is active, it's important to monitor it in that moment, of course, to see the evolution. Second point that was remarked is it's very important to have an option to activate on-demand services when is again when there is something that is movement in area, is for example a landslide that is activating, of course, low velocity. Then another need was to use a multi-band approach, so not only Sentinel-1 in C-band or Cosmo in X-band, but also, for example, SARCOM in L-band or other missions, so to cover the entire spectrum. And try to integrate also the previous historical time series using Earth, Envisat, and the other past missions. And as said also by the other speakers, the importance of validation and calibration with in situ data with GNSS. We have geodetic data from networks, from regional networks and National Institute, INGV, and others. So it's very important to use this data to have a sort of absolute displacement, absolute velocity. And another requirement was focused on the need to have nice, good information to interpret this. If we monitor PS velocity data, then it's important to understand what is the geological reason that justify this movement. If there is a geological reason, or in some other cases, maybe there is something related to some artificial change, or depends, of course. So we need this data. And the possibility to develop added value services that must be customized on user needs. So it's very important for final users to have some software or service, some tool that provides the final answer, let's say, on what is really monitoring. So to show the data in the proper way that are more easy to understand. So, or specifically to be focused on specific, let's say, inventories. For example, we are focusing on IFI, that is the national inventory of landslides in Italy, and we will develop some. We propose to develop some added value services products focused on that interact with this data. And of course, last but not least, it's very important to consider that there are other ground motion service. One, the HMS, that is cover all the Europe, and the regional ground motion services that I said, and it's very important to guarantee the consistency between them. Not only when they are based on the same mission, but also much more important when data are different, it's important that the results are consistent. So these were the requirements, and these were the, I don't go in detail. Tomorrow Andrea Ramelli will say something more about it, but to say that there are 13 products for mapping, the further time and mean resolution, and 8 products, let's say, for monitoring. That means in more real time or near real time at a higher resolution. This is the next steps of this Mirror Copernicus project. As you see, now we are in phase 1, so it's been a very long process. But we are the project has started, and prototypes are under construction, and there are some pre-operational tests. In this project, not only the users are involved, but also the industry, of course, and also other public scientific research institute like CNR. And in this way, we will be able to build this infrastructure and then to enter in the operational phases. And the final goal will be to have something operational and consolidated for several years. And this is what was requested by users. And the Mirror Copernicus project will have this ambition to provide something that will be very stable. Of course, the service must be stable, not the ground, of course. So that's all for my presentation. I don't know, more or less in time. And thank you to the participants, and I'm ready for any questions.
Thank you very much, Luca. Yes, we are sharp 2 minutes in advance. I wanted to add something to your presentation that you, in my opinion, have missed. All what you have shown is due directly or as a consequence of the activity of civil protection. Civil protection not only as a final aim, but also from the financial point of view. All the scientific studies, as well as the more or less all the application activity have been supported by the Civil Protection Department at the national level. Also, the resulting activities carried on by the Ministry of Environment are consequent and are after the activities are a consequence of the activity of civil protection. This is a needed process because usually civil protection works by hotspots where there is a crisis, where there is an emergency, where there is something, not just a systematic overview of the country. So that's the difference. But if SBAS, if INSAR, if other things, and if the service in Tuscany has been built up, comes from this source. I mean, we have to be honest about that. So there is a service for the civil protection aims in Italy. There is not a service which is a public core service at the national level. This is something different. I like to stress that. Sorry, Luca, but it's quite important.
It's true. I don't want to speak on behalf of other institutes, but
during these 5 webinars, we will have a lot of talks also from
Yeah.
civil protection body. Tomorrow there will be Fausto.
No, well, it's not an issue.
So I don't just to let them say this. Okay.
Just to let it to our colleagues, Italian colleagues, as well as the European colleagues, that we are just not at the level of the scientific production, which is not true. I mean, the operational level is exactly at the same level of the scientific production. So as a technological production as well. That's it. I wanted to stress this point. So Cosmos SkyMed comes from a support by the civil protection as well as by the research ministry as well as the defense ministry. So that's something very important to stress. Okay, so now this is part of the
by the
debate.
way, we don't see your face, Chairman.
Ah, sorry. No, I don't want to tweet them myself.
Don't be shy.
No, well. So the point is that this is the beginning of the debate. I just started the debate, and I think, Luca, I have spotted no more than 3 questions in the chat box. One has gotten already an answer by John, if I'm not wrong. John, you didn't you answer to one question put forward by Michele Lisson?
Yeah, that's true. There were some basic questions about the EGMS production, and most of this information, actually all of this information, is available in a lot of detail on the way in the specification document that can be downloaded from EEA's website. But short answer is yes, the product is based on PSI technique. So and of course it's optimized to produce data all over Europe. So it of course cannot be optimized to squeeze the most information out of every local phenomena, like especially very long nonlinear movement, but we still manage to capture most things. For example, we're using the same technology in Norway, and we have no problem with most of the landslide areas, except for extremely fast moving sites, or extreme ones with extreme seasonality.
So the other question comes from Mauro Generali, if I'm not wrong. Actually, is organizing 4 questions. The general question is sort of a bunch of questions. So who is going to answer to him? Answer this question.
Well, these are some of the questions I've answered in the chat, but so one of the question was, of course, how is a reference point fixed for each stack of images?
Exactly.
Well, the production for EGMS, I don't want to get into too much detail, but production for EGMS is being done by 4 different consortium partners. But we are producing a harmonized product using very similar techniques. And this is part of what we've had to demonstrate to EEA during this operational readiness review, is that we are producing equivalent data all throughout Europe. Nonetheless, everybody has their own slightly different processing change. Typically, though, we're all working on either a single burst or multi-burst products, the stacks of data, and choosing a reference point within each stack using mostly an automatic technique. Nobody can go in and manually choose reference points. But the main product, as Michele pointed out, for most users was going to be what we call a level 2B, or a calibrated product. And there we're taking it from being local reference frame into a geodetic reference frame. So at that point, the concept of the reference point is no longer relevant, because everything should be relevant. Everything's relevant to related to the reference frame. Yeah, the third question related to optimization for nonlinear movement. Exactly. Yes, there are limits, of course, as to how fast and how nonlinear the movement that we can properly capture. But nonetheless, the techniques are quite robust, and we capture most important types of movement. And in terms of the 4th question was, the output are filtered with some sort of coherence threshold. We're using an RMSE threshold, yes, producing a similar quality throughout Europe. Of course, we have a threshold as to what we're producing and delivering in the system. We don't have a system in place online for users to threshold the data further. However, if a user registers and downloads the data, then of course they can do whatever filtering they want locally in their GIS system.
Anyway, just to add something, we pushed the INSAR technique to use it in order to pick up the deformation of volcanic explosion. INSAR ground-based technique, what I mean, not from satellite, and we match that, which is quite different. But I mean, still you can be very close to quite not only slow, very slow motion landslides, for example. Certainly not the fast one, but I mean certainly for no real slow motion landslides, still you are able to pick up the evolution quite well. I mean, this is our experience. I don't know about you. I mean, about your experience in Norway. This is quite important for you as well, because it's quite important for tsunami. Huh?
It's very important for us also in terms of landslides. So and again, this is another reason for why the national services are still important, because there will always be some. If you have a compromise approach that's good for all of Europe, there will always be some local conditions that have to be taken into account. And another thing we are working on now are other techniques to be able to pick up very rapid moving landslides, for example, not using PSI techniques, but using other types of stacking or things. And these will only be then applied locally where they're relevant. They won't be produced on a wide scale where they're not. There's no purpose for them.
Exactly. This is the real vision of the problem. I mean, I think so. The next question was given by Vittorio Bisaglia, if not wrong. Put forward. Vittorio Bisaglia. Can you find it? Vittorio Bisaglia. Okay, there's no problem. He says the images relating to the winter periods with snow cover are not treated. Is it correct? Okay.
Yeah, I can answer that as well. To some extent, yes. We don't use a data-driven approach where we detect snow in the images and discard them. But what we do, at least for the northern latitudes, Scandinavia, is we take the average snow season. And then we discard that average snow season and use the rest of the data. Because literally we have 6 or 7 months of snow in some parts of Norway and down to 3 or 4 months in other areas. So we use a local approach using the snow cover product from Copernicus to determine the average season. How much this will be necessary in other areas in the Alps and so on, I'm not so sure. And the partners producing that area will have to make a decision.
Well, I think it is a good challenge for the future, just to think about problem linked to snow. I mean, that's a problem of Alps as well as in Norway. I mean, that's exactly our problems. Okay, the second question, well, elaboration being made with a SBAS technique, and can they be consulted? Well, SBAS technique is one of the technique. As Luca said, and you said as well, I mean, in Italy as well, we use a sort of mixture or integration between different techniques to solve, to see the problem from different points of view. That's it. I don't know if you wanted to add something.
I don't know what is to be added. The specification for EGMS has said that we should produce both single permanent and distributed scatterers where necessary. And for our own experience in Norway is that there are very few areas where a distributed scatterer technique is necessary due to the orbital characteristics and the high bandwidth and so on of Sentinel-1. When we used to do RadarSat, we had to do SBAS technique with Sentinel-1. We've switched over to a purely PSI technique. Again, locally, there might be areas where the SBAS or equivalent other type of distributed scatterers is necessary, but it's much less so than previous. But in EGMS specification, it says that
that's it.
Where necessary, distributed scatterers will be delivered.
Okay.
May I add something to the ESPAS? I think this is. Yeah, I think this is one of the chances if we have a European product that for local or smaller regional areas that we are able and we have the resources to add in with other techniques which are then really dedicated and tested for specific processes in the different services, and which is also giving, I think, a very important direction for downstreaming for the industry, etc., to really try to focus on specific user needs. And
yeah, well, we use
questions. I think this is not everything is maybe covered at on the national level or on other services, but I think the European ground motion service, this is what I tried to stress with my last slide, is giving us the, is opening up for new developments in a similar direction as John already mentioned.
Well, civil protection, Italian civil protection use that, for example, in volcanic areas quite a lot, combined with other technique. You saw some results. I mean, Luca
exactly
has shown them. I mean, that's it. Other question is Maria Teresa Denardo. Vegetation plays an important role, as I see. Are there any tools to compare measurements recorded in wooded or poorly vegetated areas affected by the same geological phenomenon? Who wants to answer?
Michela, you want to pick that one up?
Yes, it's this is the step of the interpretation of the application of the different experts familiar with that. We up to now we do not see persistent scatterer in a forest area. But of course, there are possibilities. If this area is of huge interest, you can use kriging, etc., on the data. If you know that the geological situation is similar, of course, you can try to grab more information with advanced techniques. Also, what is discussed is to try and use ESPAS for these areas, maybe because you have more aerial information in other techniques. But in general, I would say that a lot of these developments, I expect a lot of these developments in using these products and creating advanced information out of this, or to gain more information out of this data, will come in the next years, as we will have a lot of data and we will have a lot of information which needs to be applied to different tasks and different questions.
Yes, unless you put some reflective corners somewhere. So you
yes, of course. This is already done in areas like John mentioned, in areas like where it's important, where you know that you have movement, even if you have fast movements, then you will add in artificial reflectors. This is done on dams, this is done on infrastructure.
Yeah. So there is a question from Anderson or Crosetto. Does the European Ground Motion Service satisfy the infrastructure monitoring user requirements? Is the spatial resolution sufficient? Is additional processing needed? For example, persistent scatter? Yes.
I can start, and then Michele can take over, I think.
Yeah. I think so.
I mean, one thing I would like to stress is that the European Ground Motion Service is based on full resolution Sentinel-1 data. Of course, as is also somehow implied, I mean, the spatial resolution is not as good as for Cosmos SkyMed, for example.
Yeah, definitely.
So when we talk about user requirements, of course, you can do some things, and it was also demonstrated by the presentations by Michaela and John. But I think also what is important here is that we are actually making a product available at European level that is freely available, and you can use how you can use it how you like. I mean, so you can use this product to identify certain regions where you see, this is really interesting.
Exactly.
Then of course you can add your own processing, or you can buy or get access to more detailed data if necessary. So we will not meet all user requirements, that is clear. We will meet a lot of them, but of course we see the European Ground Motion Service as a one step along the road. So if you are interested in more information, you can add that, you can combine it with what is available through the service. You can download whatever you like. So that's the main idea. We will try to meet as many of these requirements as possible, but of course, I mean, not all of them can be met by Sentinel-1 and the way we make data available. I mean, another thing is the update frequency. We are working with an annual update frequency. You may be in a situation where you need more often data. So yes, we will try to meet as many, but of course there are limits, technical limits. So I don't know, Michele, if you want to add.
Yes, say a priori it's difficult to say if the product, the European Ground Motion Services, is able to monitoring all the type of infrastructure. It depends very much on the application. It depends on the type of infrastructure. We can have highways, we can have simple roads, small roads, we can have railways, we can have airports, ports, dikes. So there is really a lot of different infrastructure types. In principle, many of these infrastructure can have measurement points on them. However, the density, the availability of measurement points depends very much on the characteristics of each single infrastructure. Sometimes also the simple orientation of the same infrastructure. For instance, the orientation of railways can give a nice response to the satellite, so nice measurement points, and in other cases very few points, if not any. So a priori, so the answer is it depends very much on the type of infrastructure and on the specific case.
Okay, no more questions, I think, Luca. I think that the debate has shown the main, let's say, the main target of a core service at the European level, which is just to meet the major needs and requirements of common needs and requirement of the Copernicus users at the European level. This is quite an important. Second point is to have a common core service, to have a common response to some events, some problems, in order to discuss how to solve them at the international, interstate, member states dimension, the European dimension, as well as the local dimension. As John said, I mean, the core service at the European level is very useful, immediately useful, and as Enrique said, is free of charge, open, free of charge. So it's very useful for everybody just to have a first sight of a problem or to be warned of an anomalous situation at a larger scale. This means that you need downscaling. So you need what are the national services. I mean, that's it. You cannot avoid the national services. More than that, probably you need some local services as well. I mean, the regional scale as well, depending on the morphology as well. So if I didn't say anything wrong, I think this is the discussion, but it's very important as a dimension. And you can see in the following days, I mean, how this sort of things has been, let's say, developed at the national level, as well as in connection with the European level. Luca, this is the debate, more or less.
Okay.
And see, I mean, that's it. No more question. I don't know.
Yes,
I don't know what to say more. I mean, that's it.
Just to thanks again the speakers and thanks again the chairman. You did a very good job, I think, in leading the session and also the discussion. And so everything is fine. Just to say to all the participants that the next webinar will be tomorrow morning. So you are free for this evening, but tomorrow morning, again, you will be welcome to join the second webinar that will be focused on the nation, focus on, I speak in Italian, I think now, servizi di ground motion in Italia a scala regionale e nazionale.
Exactly.
So, domani sarà in italiano e parteciperanno i rappresentanti dei servizi geologici regionali, più rappresentanti appunto a livello nazionale. Ci sarà Fausto Guzzetti della protezione civile, Riccardo Anari per l'IREA e Andrea Taramelli in rappresentanza del Copernicus User Forum nazionale. E che volevo aggiungere? No, basta. Quindi ci vediamo domani. Domani il moderatore sarà Nicola Casagli, che è anche lui, chiaramente anche lui fa parte dell'advisory board dell'European Ground Motion Service, insieme a me e a Valerio Comerci, quindi insomma siamo praticamente contenti di fare anche questa alternanza di chairman che comunque hanno un ruolo importante in questo percorso. Non ho altro da aggiungere da parte mia, ringrazio tutti e thanks again to the speakers.
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Really, many
Thank you
thanks.
for the invitation. Goodbye.
Okay, bye. See you
You're welcome.
sometime.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye bye.
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 Bye-bye.